click our two sketches, and then over here we have our closing points in a different place. So we right click, replace, put it where we want it. Now we're going to start building the tail of the rod, if you will, the very bottom of it. It's basically the same way we did the head. We're just going to build the profile and then extrude it. Get rid of whatever's excess, make sure that everything's constrained properly. It is. Okay. And so there's the basic shape that we're going to be working with. Next up, we're going to create a couple of the fillets that we need. This fillet, Katia doesn't like it very much, but what it's going to do is offer us a solution, and we're going to take it. And this fillet works out fine. Okay, and here we're just renaming all the parts so that when we go back later and edit everything, it's easy to find what we're looking for. Alright, now we got to start working on the more detailed aspects of the head. So if you look at the overall shape in the actual drawings of this, you can see that everything is circular. So we're going to make it with circles. Pretty straightforward. That was a construction element we don't want it to be, so just make it a standard element. Just about there, start trimming off everything that's excess that we don't need. You can see the shape that we're going for, made with circles. And then we just need a couple more lines to close the profile. And we're ready to pad it out. And as you can see, we have pretty much a quarter of the part right here. Add our holes. By clicking on the circle before clicking on the face, we make sure that the holes that we make are concentric with the rounded outside surface. We just mirror that, and there's half the part that we want. And we just have a few more detailed. Again, by clicking on the outside of the circle before clicking on the face, once you have them both selected, holding down Control, you can make that hole very simply and have it concentric with the hole that you want. Here we just have one more part to extrude. Alright, and there's half our part. So alright, here we're going to make the final elongated hole, so we go into Sketcher to do that. Just setting up this construction element to help make it. Set the elongated hole. Make sure that's all standard elements. Alright, and dimension it in place. And with an elongated hole, you actually have to lift and pocket it Alright, and then we can just mirror the second half, and it is complete.
And here's the rod bush upper, rod bush lower, piston pin plug and piston pin, piston ring, master rod bearing, and the link pin.
Okay, we're going to be building all of the other smaller support components in here. These are all really simple parts. Basically your profiles with 2 concentric circles, and then give them the correct dimensions. That way when you pad it out, go ahead and do that mirrored extent. Right, and there's your part. Just do it a few more times. Here we're going to slow down a little bit and show you how to do the plug. This part's a little bit different. Basically, looking at the side of it, we're just going to sketch half of that and dimension everything down. We'll reference that constraint. Here is we're going to do a shaft command. So you lift and then shaft, it just rotates about that axis that we pick, and there's your part. Just fill at that edge right there, and it's done. A lot simpler than having to extrude twice. Here we do it one more time. And that's all there is to that. Alright, we're going to do the sub-assembly for the piston arm. First thing we need to do is pull in all of the parts that we'll need. Okay, and then just move them out so we can see them again with the translate. Okay, oh, we actually don't need that pin, do we? Okay, we are going to need a second plug. Just make another one, move it out so we can see it, and now we're going to start doing a coincidence constraint and an offset constraint, and that's going to hold that in place. And now we're going to do a coincidence constraint onto the plug along with a contact constraint. So the offset constraint for the 2 faces that aren't actually touching, and then the contact constraint for the 2 faces that are touching. And that's all there is to it. Alright, here we're making our first sub-assembly. That's the master rod. And first we're just going to pull all of the parts into this assembly that we need. Right, and here we've got them all, so now we're going to,
Using the manipulation button,
and we're going to start applying our constraints. So our first constraint is an axial constraint, and we're just going to apply that to the pin in the master rod, and now we're going to, this contact constraint puts the top of the pin with the top face of the master rod. Now we're going to apply similar, well, we're going to, by using Control-C and Control-V, copy-paste more of those in there. We accidentally moved that one over, so just hitting update will put it right back where it's supposed to be. Alright, and then put those same constraints on the rest of the pins. And this will take just a second. We'll have all of the pins in place. Update again, where they're supposed to be. Alright, now here we're going to put that same first constraint, but the second is going to be an offset constraint. An offset constraint is for 2 faces that are not touching each other, so we can keep them permanently offset at that distance. One more offset constraint here. There's the last offset constraint, and the last thing we have to do is put these pins make a second pin, and then we just have to clip them in place at the bottom. So again, this is just going to be a coincidence constraint, is what it's called, and the contact constraint. And we're done. Alright, here we're going to be creating our final assembly. So the first thing we need to do is, in the assembly workbench, open up our sub-assemblies, and we're going to also be adding the piston head. And we can use the manipulation tool to get them visible, and then just using Control V and Control C we can copy paste all the new parts in that we need. We're going to use a rotation constraint to connect everything. It's similar to the coincidence constraint, but it is in the kinematics workbench. So you just go to rotation constraint, you need to make a new mechanism. Doesn't really matter what you call it, it's the only mechanism we're going to have. Then first you pick the axes, and then you pick the similar planes between the two parts that you want to constrain. You can tell here it's not exactly where we want it, you just want to offset it. So by clicking the offset, you can adjust that between the planes and put it right in place. So we're going to go ahead and do that for all of first the piston arms connecting to the pins. And the reason we're doing this in the kinematics workbench, which is under DMU, is because it gives us the option in the future if we want to actually animate this part in CATIA. Here we're just going back into the assembly workbench so that we can use the manipulation tool again, because we want to move the assembly arms to where they're more visible, and so it'll be easier to apply the constraints on them. We're going to be doing with the piston heads. So we just manipulate those, rotate them around, and then we go right back into the kinematics workbench, where we can do, again with the rotation constraint, and we can connect the piston heads to the assembly arms. Again, we're going to have to adjust the offset. And again, you just do that by, under constraints, clicking the offset that it makes. And you can see, once I adjust this offset, that I have actually one too few piston heads. So I just need to paste one more in there really quick. And then we're going to have to jump back to the assembly workbench so that we can manipulate that out and actually see it to constrain it on. So once we get that last constraint in there, you can go back to the assembly workbench one more time, and again just rotate all of these piston heads around to where they're supposed to be. As soon as we're done with this, we will have the completed assembly for the cylinder engine.